Listen to me, if you got a plan B, you've already given up on plan A. If you're still entertaining options, you've already forfeited your obedience. Too many people lose before they begin. Not because they lack talent, not because they lack opportunity, but because they kept the back door open when God told them to walk through the front. You can't walk by faith and still leave room for retreat. You can't be all in when your heart is half out. The reason some of you can't break through is because you keep negotiating with fear. You keep consulting your insecurities every time destiny knocks. But purpose doesn't need your permission. Purpose demands your surrender. You were not created to play it safe. You were born to walk on water. And the moment you make peace with the possibility of sinking, that's the moment you start learning how to rise. You see, detachment isn't weakness. It's the highest level of strength. It's saying, I don't need the outcome to validate me because I'm already walking in alignment. That's why the spiritually mature are so calm in chaos, because their peace is not circumstantial. It's covenantal. When you detach from needing control, you unleash divine power. When you release the fear of loss, you inherit the courage to live. Stop clinging to outcomes. Stop begging for certainty. Stand in the fire and let it transform you. Everybody wants victory, but nobody wants to burn. Let me tell you something. Your next level is on the other side of everything you were willing to give up. And until you close every door behind you, you'll never be able to fully step through the one in front of you. That's why no plan B isn't just a mindset. It's a spiritual principle. It's sacrifice. It's worship. It's war. The ones who shift atmosphere don't do it by being emotional. They do it by being anchored. They're not tossed by every wave of fear, every breeze of doubt. They're grounded, rooted, unshakable, because they've already let go of everything that was weighing them down. Emotional detachment ain't heartlessness. It's holiness. It's saying, I put my life on the altar. I burned the bridge back, and now I move forward with fire in my bones. You want purpose? Then stop crying over the people who left. Stop replaying the pain. Stop waiting for the conditions to be perfect. God doesn't give blueprints. He gives burdens. And if you got the burden, you got enough to start. You don't need backup. You don't need applause. You don't need approval. You just need obedience. Some of you are so close, but your fear of letting go is stronger than your faith to leap. Let go of plan B. Let go of the need to feel safe. Let go of the lie that you need more time. Time is an illusion when eternity is calling. When purpose knocks, you don't look for a guarantee. You become the guarantee. You're still waiting for a sign, and the sign is you. You're still waiting for God to show up, and God is waiting on you to stop retreating. This is the season where you stop flirting with destiny and get married to it. This is the moment where you stop renting faith and start owning it. Burn the plan B. Burn the excuses. Burn the timelines. Burn the limits. Because when there's no plan B, there's no room for failure. Only learning, only growth, only glory. No backup plan. No way out. No turning back. Just you, your calling, and a God who never fails. Now rise. Plan B is doubt dressed as wisdom. It shows up sounding reasonable, sounding responsible, sounding like it's got your best interest in mind. But underneath all the logic and all the fake humility is one thing: fear. Fear that you're not enough. Fear that God won't come through. Fear that the vision is too big and you're too small. Fear that stepping out in faith might leave you exposed, humiliated, or broken. So plan B comes in like a lifeboat, just in case the dream sinks, just in case the calling is too costly. But what you don't realize is that the presence of plan B is the evidence of doubt. It's the internal admission that you don't trust plan A enough to give it everything you've got. And anytime you serve fear in the name of wisdom, you've already lost the battle. See, wisdom doesn't mean hedging your bets. It doesn't mean watering down your assignment. Real wisdom begins with the fear of the Lord, not the fear of failure. The moment you build a backup plan that competes with your calling, you've dethroned faith and enthroned control. And the dangerous thing about plan B is that it doesn't look like rebellion. It looks like responsibility. It wears the costume of strategy. It wears the language of maturity. It says, I'm just being smart. I'm just playing it safe. But safety has never been a prerequisite for obedience. God never asked you to be comfortable. He asked you to be faithful. When you keep plan B in your back pocket, you'll always reach for it the moment plan A gets uncomfortable. The second opposition rises, the second things go silent, the second progress gets slow, you'll start rehearsing the reasons why plan B makes more sense. That's because plan B was never meant to be a companion to your journey. It was a trap from the start. It's a soft place to fall when you were supposed to learn how to fly. It's an escape hatch you built in case your faith fades. But here's the truth. Faith doesn't need a crutch. Faith doesn't need a backup. Faith says, even if I don't see the way, I'm the way because I walk with the one who is the way. You don't need a plan B. What you need is conviction. You need that unshakable, uncompromising, fully surrendered, all-in kind of mindset that says, I'm going to do what I was called to do, even if it costs me everything. Even if I fall, even if I fail, even if I get rejected, even if I'm misunderstood, even if I'm alone. Because the ones who change the world aren't the ones who had the most resources or the best strategies. They're the ones who refuse to quit. They're the ones who never allow fear to dress up like wisdom and tell them how to live. They made a decision. They made a covenant. They burned every bridge to retreat. And because of that, they walked in the fullness of who they were created to be. Detachment is not apathy. It's clarity. Apathy is indifference. It says, I don't care. But detachment says, I care deeply, but I'm no longer controlled. There's a big difference between letting go and giving up. Giving up is what happens when you're exhausted. Letting go is what happens when you're enlightened. Detachment is what allows you to stand in purpose without being swayed by pressure. It's not that you don't feel, it's that you refuse to be ruled by feelings. And that kind of strength doesn't come from willpower. It comes from knowing who you are and why you were sent. So many people confuse emotional chaos with passion. They think being overwhelmed is a sign they care. They think staying attached to every outcome, every opinion, every result is a mark of commitment. But it's not. That's not love. That's not purpose. That's desperation. That's identity confusion. Because when your sense of value is rooted in how things turn out, you'll spend your life chasing validation instead of standing in vision. Clarity comes when you understand your calling is bigger than your feelings. And when you've seen what God called you to do, everything else becomes background noise. Detachment doesn't mean you stop working hard. It means you stop striving from fear. It means you do everything with excellence and then release the outcome because you know it's not your outcome to control. That's clarity. Clarity says, I know my assignment and I trust the process, even when it doesn't make sense. That's what allows you to keep moving forward when everything around you is screaming quit. That's what lets you give your all and still sleep in peace at night. Because your peace doesn't come from the results, it comes from obedience. When you're detached spiritually and emotionally, it doesn't make you numb. It makes you sharp. You stop wasting energy on things you can't change. You stop being reactive. You stop letting your past keep you hostage. You stop needing people to understand you like you, validate you. You become focused, fixed, firm, because detachment reveals what truly matters. It separates the essential from the temporary. And when you got that kind of clarity, you can walk into any room, face any storm, lose any deal, and still know you didn't lose you. Most people aren't defeated by failure. They're defeated by their attachment to how things were supposed to look. But if you ever want to soar, you got to cut the weights. Let go of what you thought it would be. Let go of needing it to work the first time. Let go of how people let go of control. You are not what you lost. You are not what they said. You are not the outcome. You are who God called. And when that becomes your truth, detachment becomes your weapon. It's not cold. It's not cruel. It's clarity. And clarity is what keeps you free in a world built to enslave you with distraction, expectation, and emotion. Purpose doesn't negotiate with comfort zones. It doesn't sit at the table and have polite discussions with fear. It doesn't ask permission from your preferences or check with your feelings before it calls you to rise. Purpose disrupts. It pulls you out of what's familiar and throws you into what's necessary. And too often people miss their calling, not because they didn't hear it, but because they didn't want to leave what felt safe. They wanted purpose, but they didn't want pain. They wanted elevation, but they didn't want disruption. They prayed for change, but they didn't want to be changed. But there is no way to live out a calling and stay comfortable at the same time. Purpose isn't polite. It's not concerned with how easy it is for you. It's concerned with how real you're willing to be. Because the calling on your life requires you to become someone you've never been. It demands a version of you that comfort will never produce. And here's the truth. Everything you've been praying for, everything you've been dreaming about is on the other side of the line. You're scared to cross that line between what's known and what's next. That line between the shallow and the deep. That line between who you've been and who you're called to be. And until you're willing to walk away from the comfort of plan B, you'll never fully access the fire of plan A. You can't straddle obedience. You can't walk forward while holding on to what's behind you. Purpose isn't interested in how much you've done. It's interested in whether you're willing to go again. Deeper, bolder, freer. Comfort is a trap. It's a thief dressed as peace. It will lull you to sleep while your potential dies quietly in the background. That's why you can't negotiate with it. That's why you can't reason with it. You have to break up with it. You have to make a decision that your future is worth the discomfort, that your calling is more valuable than your convenience. Every great move of God in your life will come with discomfort, with pressure, with the feeling of, I don't know if I can do this. And that's the exact space where purpose lives, right there in the tension, in the stretch, in the fire, because that fire is what purifies your intention. That fire is what reveals your why. That fire is what shows heaven that you're serious. Comfort will never require sacrifice, but purpose always will. So stop expecting to be called and coddled at the same time. Stop expecting elevation to feel easy. You weren't created to fit in. You were called to break through. And breakthrough never comes without breaking something. Breaking patterns, breaking silence, breaking chains. That's what happens when you stop negotiating and start surrendering. Purpose will never compromise. It's either all of you or it's none of you. So either you live to preserve comfort or you live to pursue calling. But you can't do both. Inner peace comes when your identity is not tied to the outcome, but to obedience. Too many people live with anxiety. Not because they're doing the wrong thing, but because they're doing the right thing with the wrong foundation. They've built their sense of worth around the results. They only feel valuable if they win. They only feel secure if it works. They only feel confident if people clap. But that kind of identity is fragile. It's vulnerable to circumstances, to criticism, to setbacks. One bad day, one failure, one rejection, and their entire self-image collapses. That's because their peace was rooted in performance, not in purpose. Real peace, the kind that doesn't move in the storm, comes when you know who you are, apart from what happens. It's knowing that success is not your source, and failure is not your identity. You were never called to manage outcomes. You were called to obey the assignment. That means showing up with excellence, giving your all, walking in integrity, and then letting God be God. If he opens the door, you walk through it. If he closes the door, you worship at it. Either way, your value doesn't shift. Your identity doesn't crumble because your identity is rooted in the fact that you said yes, even when it cost you everything. That's the kind of obedience that brings peace. Not the shallow peace that depends on good news, but the deep peace that comes from being in alignment. That's where rest lives. That's where clarity shows up. That's where fear loses its grip. Because when your identity is no longer tied to the outcome, you're free to try, free to risk, free to create, free to love, free to fail without calling yourself a failure. You no longer hustle for validation. You carry the conviction that you're already enough because you obeyed. Obedience doesn't always lead to a crowd. Sometimes it leads to a desert. Sometimes it leads to a door that never opened or a path that feels lonely. But the peace that comes from knowing you are faithful outweighs every applause you never got. Obedience is about alignment, not applause. And alignment brings peace, even when everything around you feels chaotic. That's how you stay grounded. That's how you stay strong, not by controlling life, but by surrendering the illusion that you were ever supposed to. So if you want peace, stop attaching your identity to things you can't control. Stop believing that the outcome determines your worth. Start measuring success by your obedience. Did you show up? Did you speak the truth? Did you move in faith? Then you're already walking in victory. Don't let numbers, opinions, or delays redefine who you are. Anchor yourself in obedience. Root yourself in faithfulness. Because when your identity is found in the yes you gave to God, not the result you wanted, nothing can take your peace. Not failure, not success, not silence, not storms. That's when you're truly free. When there is no plan B, your spirit burns brighter with resolve instead of retreat. The absence of options forces a fire to rise within you that can't be replicated in a life filled with escape routes. When you strip away the alternatives, when you remove the safety nets, what's left is raw commitment. Not the kind that's easily shaken or swayed, but the kind that's forged in clarity and purpose. That's when you stop entertaining doubt and start embodying faith. That's when you don't just believe in the vision, you become the vision. You carry it in your walk, in your words, in your work ethic, in your prayers. You stop waiting for motivation and you start burning with divine conviction. People who keep fallback plans never learn what they're truly made of. They never access the version of themselves that only shows up in pressure. There's a strength that doesn't surface when you have options. There's a level of focus, of drive, of grit that only emerges when quitting is no longer an option. That's what happens when you burn plan B. You ignite a part of your spirit that refuses to turn around, refuses to slow down, refuses to entertain anything less than what God said. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. It's the confidence that comes from knowing you were built for this. It's the boldness that shows up when you no longer need to negotiate with fear. When retreat is removed from your vocabulary, resolve takes its place. You stop asking, what if it doesn't work? And you start declaring, it will work because I won't stop until it does. You start moving with power, not a surface level intensity that fades in difficulty, but a deep soul-rooted fire that grows stronger in resistance. That fire doesn't come from hype. It comes from hunger, from decision, from the deep daily commitment to your purpose. And nothing lights that fire more than the refusal to turn back. That's the danger of plan B. It gives you a false sense of security that weakens your conviction. It waters down your urgency. It allows hesitation to live where action should reign. But when plan A is the only plan, you move differently. You pray harder. You focus deeper. You protect your energy. You cut distractions. You stretch yourself. You learn. You grow. You refuse to settle. You become unrecognizable to the version of yourself that was still entertaining. Second options. You were never created to live halfway. The destiny doesn't unfold through divided commitment. The fullness of your calling demands the fullness of your surrender. No backup, no escape, no maybe. Just you and the mission. Just you and the call. Just you and the God who placed it in you. And when that's all you have, that's all you need. Because when there is no plan B, retreat is not even a thought. All that's left is resolve. And that kind of resolve cannot be broken. It can only be refined. It burns, it consumes, it wins. Every time. The spiritually detached are not void of emotion. They're rooted beyond emotion. Detachment doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop being controlled by what you feel. It's the difference between sensing the storm and being swallowed by it. Emotion has its place, but it was never meant to drive the vehicle. When you're spiritually mature, you can feel pain and still move forward. You can feel fear and still take the step. You can feel disappointment and still praise, because your anchor is not your feelings. It's your foundation. And that foundation is built on something eternal, not emotional. Too often, people confuse detachment with disconnection. But spiritual detachment isn't about checking out. It's about checking in with truth. It's not numbness. It's mastery. You've mastered the art of letting your feelings exist without letting them dictate your faith. You've trained your soul to stay rooted in what God said, not in what the moment feels like. That's where real power comes from. The ability to remain unmoved in the presence of pressure. The ability to stay clear in the fog of confusion. The ability to hear purpose louder than panic. When you're rooted beyond emotion, your stability no longer depends on external conditions. You don't need applause to stay confident. You don't need understanding to keep walking. You don't need comfort to stay committed. That's because your spirit is anchored in something deeper, something immovable, something untouchable by circumstances. It's a holy calm, a divine steadiness, the kind of presence that confuses people because they can't understand how you're still standing, how you're still smiling, how you're still pushing. But you know why? You know what you're connected to. You know your source is deeper than the surface. Being rooted beyond emotion doesn't make you less human. It makes you more resilient. It allows you to experience life fully without being mastered by it. You're not in denial about what's happening, but you're not defined by it either. You don't live your life according to the ups and downs of the moment. You live from a place of revelation, not reaction. That's the posture of someone who's detached spiritually, not cold, not distant, but focused, clear, free. Because when your spirit is in control, your emotions are no longer the boss. They're passengers. You acknowledge them, but they don't set your pace. You respect them, but they don't decide your direction. That's how you stay faithful even when you're frustrated. That's how you stay gracious even when you're grieving. That's how you keep showing up when you feel like giving up. Not because you don't feel, but because you feel deeply and still choose discipline over drama. And that kind of spiritual detachment is not weakness, it's the evidence of maturity. It's the proof that you're no longer living based on how things feel, but based on what you know is true. And when you live from truth instead of emotion, you walk in a level of authority that feelings can't touch and storms can't shake. Those who don't need to control the result are the ones most likely to change it. The need to control is rooted in fear, fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of not being enough. When you're obsessed with control, you start moving from a place of insecurity instead of intention. You manipulate force, strive, and stress because deep down, you're afraid that if you don't control every piece, it's going to fall apart. But the irony is, the tighter you hold on, the more you block what you were meant to allow. True impact doesn't come from controlling the outcome. It comes from aligning with purpose and trusting the process. The ones who create real change aren't the ones who cling to control. They're the ones who release the need to predict every detail and instead walk in peace, trusting that their obedience is enough. When you stop trying to force results, you create room for revelation. When you stop trying to manipulate every piece, you make space for movement. Control is small-minded. It's limited to your perspective. It's bound by what you can see. But surrender opens you up to something bigger. It says, even if I can't see how, I trust that my obedience is working for something beyond what I can calculate. Letting go of control doesn't mean letting go of excellence. It doesn't mean slacking off or hoping things magically fall into place. It means you do the work. You show up with fire. You give everything you've got, and then you rest. Not because it's finished, but because you're faithful. That's when peace finds you. That's when clarity shows up. That's when your spirit stops striving and starts flowing. You see, control produces tension, but trust produces power. When you need to control the outcome, you stay bound by outcomes. But when you release that need, your mind becomes sharper. Your energy becomes cleaner. You start attracting the right people, stepping into the right rooms, speaking with authority, not because you got everything figured out, but because you got nothing to prove. You stop moving in fear and start moving in faith. The reason some people never access their full potential is because they're too focused on outcomes and not focused enough on obedience. But the ones who change the world are the ones who trust that if they keep showing up, something will break, something will shift, something will open. They're not obsessed with the timeline. They're committed to the mission. That detachment from outcome creates an internal freedom that becomes a magnet for breakthrough. And that's the key. When you stop needing to control the result, your energy shifts from survival to creation. You no longer act out of desperation. You act out of destiny. That's when people listen differently. That's when doors open. That's when you walk into places and things just happen. Because your posture is no longer one of control, but of alignment. And alignment is always more powerful than control. Every time, true warriors don't flee to plan B. They stand in the fire and become it. They don't run from the heat. They let it shape them. They let it mold them. They let it expose what's fake and burn away what's weak. Because real strength isn't proven on the mountaintop. It's forged in the valley. It's not proven when everything goes right. It's proven when everything falls apart and you still choose to stand. A true warrior doesn't look for the exit when pressure rises. They lean in. They understand that the fire wasn't sent to destroy them. It was sent to reveal them. The problem with plan B is that it gives you a place to hide. It gives you a comfortable excuse to bow out before the process is finished. It allows you to justify quitting while pretending you're just being practical. But warriors don't look for convenience. They look for transformation. They know the fire is uncomfortable. They know it hurts. They know it stretches. But they also know that the fire has a purpose. It purifies. It strengthens. It clears away the noise and leaves only what's real. And when you let the fire do its work, you don't just survive, you emerge changed. Most people want greatness without pain, growth without pressure, purpose without sacrifice. But that's not how this works. You cannot carry destiny and comfort in the same hands. If you've been called to something higher, then expect the fire, expect the trials, expect the tests, because the calling requires the cleansing. The weight of your purpose demands the strength of your character, and that character is only built in fire. You can't be soft and expect to shift the world. You can't be fragile and expect to walk in authority. You got to let the flames refine you until the fear falls off and the fake burns away. When warriors face the heat, they don't ask, how can I get out? They ask, what can I become through this? That's what separates them. That's what gives them an edge. They don't waste time wishing for an easier path. They embrace the one in front of them with full conviction. And because they stay when others flee, they become what others never will. They become the fire. They walk through rooms and shift the temperature. They speak and atmospheres change. They move and obstacles melt. Not because they're special, but because they stayed. Because they stood when it wasn't popular. Because they refused to bow to plan B. That's what the fire is doing in you. It's not punishing you. It's preparing you. Preparing you to be the one who doesn't flinch. Preparing you to carry a vision too heavy for those who live off backup plans. Preparing you to lead with a heart that's been tested and a spirit that doesn't break. You can't get that through shortcuts. You can't get that by playing it safe. You get that by standing in the fire until it no longer consumes you, but empowers you. That's how warriors are made. The absence of a backup plan bursts the presence of divine intervention. When you remove your own escape routes, you create space for the supernatural to step in. As long as you're leaning on your own understanding, your own strategies, your own what-if scenarios, you leave very little room for God to reveal himself. But the moment you say, this is it, I'm all in, there's no plan B, heaven leans in. Because faith without options is the kind of faith that moves mountains. It's not reckless. It's relentless. It's not blind. It's focused. It's the kind of faith that says, I have no safety net, but I have a savior. I don't know the outcome, but I know the one who holds it. Most people never experience divine power because they built a life that doesn't require it. They've got backup plans, fallback positions, escape doors. So when fear whispers, they run to comfort. When doubt rises, they shrink into logic. But God doesn't move in your logic. He moves in your surrender. He doesn't show up where you have control. He shows up where you have courage. You've been praying for breakthrough, but you've also been preparing for failure. You've been asking for miracles, but holding on to mechanisms. And that split loyalty is why you're stuck, because you haven't given him room to be who he promised he'd be. Divine intervention isn't random. It's not luck. It's drawn to desperation mixed with faith. It shows up when you've exhausted your own strength and still refuse to quit. When you've given your all and kept nothing in reserve, that's when heaven opens. That's when doors swing wide. That's when resources, favor, alignment, timing all start moving in your direction. Not because you manipulated the situation, but because you trusted beyond what made sense. That's where God works best, where you end. And that's the beauty of having no plan B. You don't just force yourself to go harder. You posture your heart for a miracle. You step into waters too deep for you to stand, trusting that something will carry you. That kind of surrender is power. That kind of obedience is magnetic. It draws grace, provision, clarity. It releases the things that can't be accessed by hustle or intellect. Because heaven doesn't respond to pressure. It responds to faith. So if you want to see God move, stop trying to be your own backup. Stop trying to outthink the process. Stop keeping an extra plan in your pocket, just in case. Rip up the contingency. Cancel the exit strategy. Burn the bridge back. Because when there's no plan B, there's only purpose. There's only commitment. There's only total trust. And when that trust is real, divine intervention is not a possibility. It's a promise. You won't need to force it. You won't need to beg. It will find you right where your faith left everything else behind. You can't be fully committed with divided loyalties. Either you're all in or you're already out. Commitment requires clarity, and clarity demands a decision. The reason so many people never reach their full potential is because they never actually decide. They try to walk two roads at once, keeping one foot in purpose and the other in convenience. One hand on the calling and the other on comfort. But that split focus is what weakens them. That internal division is what delays them. And until you make a full decision, you're only partially present. And partial presence can't produce full transformation. There is no power in half-hearted pursuit. There's no breakthrough in lukewarm obedience. God doesn't move in double-mindedness. You can't keep trying to serve your fear and your future at the same time. You can't keep trying to honor your past and chase your purpose. Loyalty to your limitations will always disqualify you from elevation. You've got to choose. You've got to plant your feet. You've got to burn the other options and say, this is who I am. This is what I was born to do, and I'm not turning back. You cannot conquer what you won't commit to. And commitment is not just words, it's action that remains steady in silence, in difficulty, in delay. The moment you say yes to your calling, everything else has to become secondary. Your excuses, your distractions, your doubts, your fears, they cannot sit at the table with your purpose. You got to stop feeding the things that are fighting your future. You got to stop negotiating with the version of you that's afraid. Because the moment you keep a door open to your doubts, your commitment is already compromised. The difference between the people who make it and the people who don't isn't talent, it's loyalty. Not loyalty to people or outcomes, but loyalty to the decision they made when no one was watching. Loyalty to the assignment. Loyalty to the vision God gave them, even when the evidence wasn't visible. That kind of loyalty is rare, but it's what separates destiny walkers from daydreamers. It's what separates those who wish from those who work. You can't move in power if you keep checking in with your fears to see if it's still worth it. Make the decision once and then stop redeciding every time it gets hard. That's where true commitment is forged. When you refuse to give yourself the option to quit, when you silence the voice that says, what if it doesn't work? With the truth that says, I didn't come this far to go back. You don't need a million options. You need one clear decision, one reason why, one unshakable yes. Because once you've made that decision in your soul, not just in your emotions, the world starts to move differently. Opportunities show up, clarity increases, strength multiplies. But only when your loyalty is no longer divided. Only when your yes becomes your lifestyle. Only when you're all in. So here's the truth. Either you live like you've got a way out, or you live like you were born for this. There is no middle ground. The ones who rise, the ones who shift nations, the ones who shake atmospheres, they don't move with backup plans. They burn them. They don't entertain options. They silence them. They don't ask, what if it doesn't work? They declare, I will work it until it does. That's the difference. Not talent, not luck, not opportunity, but fire. A decision so final that the only way out is through. The only direction is forward. The only language is faith. You weren't created to live cautiously. You were created to live consumed with vision, with purpose, with obedience, so loud that fear gets drowned out by your footsteps. The world doesn't need more people who play it safe. It needs warriors who are willing to bleed for what they believe. It needs men and women who show up with no plan B, no excuses, no retreat, just purpose in their eyes and fire in their bones. So today, decide, choose, commit. Let the world wonder how you keep standing. Let your past watch you break every limitation it tried to put on you. Let every closed door witness your resilience. Because when you make that kind of decision, when you lock in without turning back, you don't just chase destiny, you become it. No more plan B. No more negotiating with fear. No more waiting for perfect conditions. Burn the backup plan and become the fire. You were never meant to play it safe. You were born to set the standard. All in, all faith, all purpose. Now go prove why you were chosen. Tools. Chat G.